conspiracy to commit murder on Cesar Chavez, and I was a part of it.
That is the voice of Larry Shears, former police informant. He told a news conference in Los Angeles last week that there had been a plot to assassinate Chavez, who heads the United Farm Workers Organizing Committee. Shears says he got involved with the alleged plot when the Kern County Sheriff's Office asked him to infiltrate the organization of Richard Pettigo, described by Shears as a large-scale dope dealer who had other interests.
Now, Richard Pettigo, you'd have to know the man. He's very, very heavy-type people, has a lot of connections with a lot of heavy people, and I had become more or less of a bodyguard and a traveling companion with this man, and I'd set our businessmen's homes in Bakersfield and discussed arson contracts with he and Richard and various people in town, and I knew that he didn't fool around with this guy. And one afternoon he called me to his home. He says, "I want to talk to you." He said, "I need somebody that's really, that I can really depend on. This is a heavy one." He says, "Would you like to burn some records for $5,000? And I said, "Jesus Christ, I'll burn the president's records for $5,000. He said, "Well, it's pretty heavy, people, and it's got to be done. If you want to do it, why, we can get together on it." And I told him, I said, "Well, for $5,000, it's got to be more to it than just this." He said, "Well, yeah, there is." And I said, "Well, come on, Richard, I don't want to get involved in something that's too heavy, He said, "Well, we're going to burn the records of Cesar Chavez, and then they're going to hit him." I said, "You got a contract on him?" He said, $25,000 worth. I thought it over very carefully and talked with Richard a little more about it, and he suggested a thermite grenade, a few other things to burn this file with, and that would put the case in the jurisdiction of ATF.
ATF, the Alcoholic, Tobacco, and Firearms Control Unit of the Internal Revenue Service.
That would be the highest agency that you could go to. And I knew of two agents in the Bakersfield area that were young, pretty sharp. Their office was small. They didn't have any help in there. And yet, it was a tight organization, and I felt like if anybody could do it, they could, because they had the facilities and the manpower that they could bring down. So I contacted Agent Vizard and Agent Cook. And they were all...
You know their first names?
Yes, Richard Cook and Bill Vizard.
The ATF agreed to pay Shears some money for whatever he found out about the alleged plot. The hitman was to be one Buddy Jean Prochnow, who was already facing a murder charge in Visalia. But Shears says Pettigo wanted to kill Prochnow after he had killed Chavez. The ATF asked Shears to see if an ATF agent could be infiltrated into Pettigo's organization to obtain more information.
I agreed to take an agent and try to get him in, and I did. I got Agent Robinson in, Lester Robinson.
How'd you do that?
Well, there was some problems that we had. For one thing, the files that I was supposed to burn for Richard Pettigo originally were in the Delano area. They had a great deal of information compiled on these files with regard to where it was, how to best get to them, and specifically they would like to have had the files. Richard Pettigo wanted to have the files and have them delivered to some people in the Delano area.
What do you know about the nature of the files?
Nothing. I have rumors, but no fact.
Did he know who it was to be delivered to?
Yes.
Who?
John Tudor.
Tudor?
Mm-hmm.
T-U-D-O-R?
Right.
T-C.
Well, Tudor in this particular thing was the bagman that brought the money down for the hit on Cesar Chavez. I understand Tudor's father is a farmer in the Delano area, and I don't know much else about the man other than that, except that he was involved in truck hijack cargoes and a few other things like that, some narcotics traffic, and was a very close friend of Richard Pettigo's.
Tudor has denied any part of the Shears allegations, and the law enforcement agencies involved, ATF and the Kern County Sheriff, say the only information on the alleged plot comes from Shears. ATF says they consider the case closed, but the Kern County Sheriff and the State Attorney General's office say they may continue to investigate the case. What made Shears decide to tell his story to the farm workers? One reason is money. The other, Larry Shears puts it this way.
I don't know Cesar Chavez. I've never met the man. But too goddamn many people have been getting shot and killed around here, and even though politically I may not agree with him, I just felt like I was doing something that needed to be done, seriously. I mean, I'm not an idealist or anything like that. I had mercenary motives, but damn it, the guy, you know, why sit idly by and watch another guy get killed, you know? As far as I know, Chavez might be doing a hell of a lot of good.
The tapes of Scheer's statements were made at a news conference held in Los Angeles by the Farm Workers Union. The tapes were made by Sam Kushner of the People's World, who had permission to give them to KPFK for this exclusive radio coverage. Tonight at 7 o'clock, immediately following this newscast, KPFK Public Affairs will present an hour-long program based on these tapes. This is Mike Handel for Life on Earth.
A police informer charges that police had pre-knowledge of the 1969 Marin County courthouse shootout in which 4 people were killed. Louis Tackwood, who has served as a paid informer and agent provocateur for the Los Angeles Police Department, Federal Bureau of Investigation, and California Identification and Investigation, has charged that he was engaged in the suppression of evidence while in the employ of the criminal conspiracy section of the LAPD, which would prove that Angela Davis is innocent of the charges for which she is currently on trial. Mr. Tackwood has been a paid informer of these law enforcement agencies since 1962, when he was arrested for transporting stolen cars across the California border. At that time, he was offered immunity from prosecution by Sergeant E.C. Williams of the LAPD in exchange for information he could supply police which would aid them in the apprehension of other car thieves. Tackwood was allowed to continue his criminal activities during this relationship with police. Shortly after the Watts Rebellion in 1965, he was transferred to the LAPD Special Investigation and Identification Section, reporting to Sergeants Edward Watkins and Lawrence Brown. In 1969, a new section was formed under the direction of Lieutenant Robert Keel to deal with, quote, criminal conspiracies, unquote, although its activities were primarily concerned with political surveillance. Tackwood was asked by Lieutenant Keel to work for CCS, as the new section was called. While in the employ of CCS, Tackwood was assigned to be the police contact with Juan Carenga, organizer of the black militant organization US. Tackwood claims that the LAPD was completely supporting Carenga's organization and that, quote, Carenga was getting paid for doing one thing. He had an organization just as strong as the Panthers at that time, and he was being paid to stop the spread of Pantherism. He was also paid to kill off half of them, unquote. Tackwood claims that this policy resulted in the assassination at UCLA in December of 1968 of John Huggins and L. Prentice Bunchy Carter, then officials of the Black Panther Party Los Angeles chapter. Since that time, Tackwood has been assigned to work exclusively with black political organizations and most often with the Panthers. He claims that he was ordered to work as an informer in the Angela Davis Defense Committee and the Soledad Brothers Defense Committee to discover their sources of financing. In carrying out this assignment, he says, he planted eavesdropping devices and pilfered files and phone lists. He asserts that the overall plan toward which these activities is aimed is to create evidence of a conspiracy between white radical organizations and the Davis and Soledad Brothers Defense Committees. The intention of much of his informing and provocateurism, he stated, is to substantiate police suspicions about the financing of radical organizations and to prevent black and white radicals from working in concert. KPFK will make further details available during subsequent newscasts and special programming. This is Mary Bess reporting. In July of this year, Louis Tackwood decided to terminate his relationship with the Los Angeles Police Department, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and California Intelligence and Investigation, the state's counterpart to the FBI. At this time, he made contact with several individuals who have subsequently formed the Citizens Research and Investigation Committee, known as CRIC. In mid-August, KPFK was informed of Tackwood's intentions and began working with members of CRIC, establishing a means of investigating and documenting Mr. Tackwood's allegations and maintaining his cover until an appropriate time for his surfacing could be calculated. From mid-July to September, Tackwood and Crick set about recording his experiences as an informer and agent provocateur for the purposes of documenting illegal acts perpetrated by police against citizens, particularly those active in left-wing political movements. On September 15th, Mr. Tackwood informed Crick that he had documents in his possession to verify his most sensational allegation: the existence of a police conspiracy to kill notables in attendance at the National Republican Convention in San Diego in 1972. According to Tackwood, police hoped these bombings would create a situation which would permit President Nixon to invoke emergency powers, leading to the arrest and detention of political activists throughout the country. That day, Tackwood disappeared without word or trace. His disappearance caused members of Crick to file an affidavit with U.S. Attorney General John Mitchell, the U.S. Attorney for California, and the U.S. Attorney for Los Angeles, listing Mr. Tackwood's allegations concerning illegal activities perpetrated by various law enforcement agencies, asking that Mr. Tackwood's disappearance be investigated, and charging foul play on the part of Tackwood's former employers, particularly Lieutenant Robert Keel of the Criminal Conspiracy Section of the LAPD and Special Agent Ed Birch of Squad 19 of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, among others. After Tackwood's disappearance, Marilyn Katz, Robert Dugan, and Mike McCarthy, members of Crick, contacted reporters from the Washington Post, Newsweek, and the Los Angeles Times, hoping that their investigations into Tackwood's allegations would put pressure on Tackwood's believed captors and precipitate his release. Quite unexpectedly, Mr. Tackwood reappeared last Thursday, approximately 3 weeks after his disappearance. He emerged from the Los Angeles District Attorney's office, where he claimed he was forced to be photographed, signing a statement denying the truth of the allegations contained in the affidavit filed by Crick. He also claimed that he had been held by CCS in various precincts throughout Los Angeles during his near 3-week absence. Since Tackwood's release from the DA's office, he has been undergoing a series of polygraph examinations sponsored by the LA Times, the Washington Post, and Newsweek, and under the direction of Chris Gugas of 1680 North Vine in Hollywood, to try to determine the truthfulness of those allegations which cannot be verified without access to the files of various law enforcement agencies. KPFK reporter Bert Swope called Jerry Cohn, reporter for the LA Times investigating the Tackwood disclosures, about the results of the polygraph examination. Cohen indicated to him that the results are not available, and even if they were, he would consider them the property of the LA Times and not make them available for public scrutiny. Swope also contacted Lieutenant Keel of the CCS of the LAPD, who acknowledges that Tackwood has worked for the LAPD but would not respond to Tackwood's allegations. Mr. Tackwood did make a recording of a telephone conversation with Sergeant Lawrence Brown of the Special Investigation and Identification Section of the LAPD to demonstrate his former association with the LAPD.
The number I'm dialing is 485-2521. That is SSII, Sergeant Brown.
Good afternoon, Special Investigation Section Sergeant Brown. May I help you?
Yeah, I hope the heat kill you.
Hey, what's happening?
What it is, buddy?
What's happening?
Oh, nothing much. I just, I'm telling you, I ain't been able to get a hold of nobody. I'm going to tell you every now and then. What you been doing?
Well, I've just been sitting here perspiring and sweating,
Oh, yeah?
waiting to go on my vacation.
When your vacation
I'm
starts?
starting Friday.
Good Lord.
That's why I'm not getting involved in anything.
Look out. Hey, you know, I talked to Mahoney yesterday.
Yeah, he mentioned this morning, just in passing, that you called.
Yeah, he told me what Austin said.
Who?
You remember where I went out and bought the dynamite?
Oh, yeah.
And they
What
said,
did he say?
that he told him, he said, hey, man, you got a man in the force named Tackwood working for you.
Is that right?
Yeah, that sure is kind of hurt me. They should have busted him when I got the dynamite.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to tell you, when went up to see Jameson.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. You know something, though, man? They should have killed him, though.
Who, James?
Yeah.
Well, that's the only way you're going to stop him.
They should have killed him when they had a chance to in Los Angeles. I don't know what they was bullshitting around about, because I'm going to tell you, he's dangerous, man. That man's a madman. But look here. What I wanted to ask you, old good buddy, is, when you gonna be, you gonna leave Friday?
Actually, I start Friday. I won't even be here. I'll be here about half day Thursday, and that's the end of it.
Oh, yeah. I got down there before Thursday to see you then,
Yeah. What's up?
Nothing. I'm going to tell you before you go on vacation, I won't see you. I got an old fifth of that 25-year-old Scotch I was going to give you.
Woo!
Woo! Yeah, I had a case of it. Ambassador Royal. I'll bring you old 25-year-old fifth.
Where'd you get it, man?
Man, you know me. I know everybody in town. I know everybody in town. When you give me another case to work on?
Well, hey, you're out there, man. Give us one to work on.
Well, you know, I'm going to tell you, hey, how can I ask you one thing?
Sure.
And I got good reason to be kind of mad about not working right now. How bad did CIA fuck over me on the Angela Davis thing up north? Twice, man, twice on a Monday.
Is that right?
You know, the first time I went up there, you remember, to get down there, they fucked over me, right?
Yeah.
On the Monday. Then now I come back down here, I cried to come back, remember?
Yeah.
And then I came back, and when
yeah, well, that's the deal. You see, I don't like that shit. Because of what you were doing, I had to let the people upstairs know about it. I don't believe in bringing in another agencies.
Yeah.
You know that. Fuck them. I don't talk to anybody else.
Yeah, well, that was bad. Then they all get together talking about, no, they ain't gonna fuck over you. Call me. They ain't gonna fuck over you no more. We'll give you the money when you go.
Yeah.
I go back up there and what happened? Same thing. I'm gonna tell you. Get all kind of good information.
Yeah, but you remember when you dealt with me directly, you didn't
was
get
good
fucked
people.
over.
Yeah, you know, I ain't never blamed you for it either.
Yeah.
I ain't never blamed you for it. Hey, look here. So I come in tomorrow. Today or tomorrow, yeah, in the morning.
Well, okay.
And I bring a 24-year-old. Hey, connect me with the old goon
upstairs.
You know, the madman upstairs.
Okay, hold on.
Okay.
Tackwood referred to James Carr, his brother-in-law and number 3 man in the Panther hierarchy, whom he claimed was at one time singled out for assassination by members of the CCS. Mr. Tackwood will hold a press conference tomorrow morning, which will be broadcast over KPFK Live at 10:30 a.m. This is Mary Bess reporting. Today, State Senator Mervyn Dimely responded to former police informant and agent provocateur Louis Tackwood's allegations that police conducted illegal surveillance of the 1970 Berkeley councilmanic election campaign with this statement. It seems to me, said Dimely, that possible law enforcement interference into election processes and use of paid informers in city elections would be an appropriate area for study by the state legislature's newly created Joint Committee for Revision of the Elections Code. Dimely is chairman of that committee, and he added that, quote, the public ought to know to what extent law enforcement officials and their informers are meddling in state and local elections, unquote. Mr. Tackwood had charged that he was ordered by his superiors in the criminal conspiracy section of the LAPD and California Investigation and Identification to bug discussions of election strategy of the candidates on the radical slate and to obtain the names, addresses, and phone numbers of contributors and workers in the campaigns of radical candidates. The only official response to ex-informant and agent provocateur Louis Tackwood's allegations concerning the LAPD, besides no comment, was provided today by Police Chief Ed Davis, who said, quote, a Bolshevik has been working for 2 weeks to plant a false story involving the President of the United States and the Los Angeles Police Department. I thought that such a story would appear in Pravda, but was surprised that Los Angeles reporters were listening to the story. Reporters asked Louis Tackwood for his response to Chief Davis's comment.
Just like, well, I'm going to tell you, I mean, I'm sorry for laughing, you know, but I'm going to tell you, well, I just got, my reaction is this. I've been a Bolshevik for 10 years for Los Angeles Police Department.
That was Louis Tackwood, former agent provocateur and informant for the LAPD. This is Mary Bess reporting for KPFK. Ex-police informant and agent provocateur Louis Tackwood's parole officer, LeVan Bell, today confirmed for KPFK that the Parole Services Division of the Department of Corrections, State of California, has had an all-points bulletin out on Louis Tackwood since August 21st of last year. Mr. Bell reported that Mr. Tackwood had maintained at least informal contact with him from January of 1969 to April of 1970, when Mr. Tackwood apparently left the state for New Orleans. Mr. Bell went on to point out that an attempt to seek out a parole violator is made up to 60 days after the all-points bulletin is issued. If the violator is not found within 60 days, the matter is generally dropped until the violator is picked up for another reason, and the warrant is found to be outstanding for him. Members of the Citizens Research and Investigation Committee, a group aiding Mr. Tackwood in his attempt to make public his experiences with law enforcement, were alerted yesterday that the Parole Department was pursuing Mr. Tackwood for the August 1970 violation. When asked if the Los Angeles Police Department had ordered the Parole Department's pursuit of Tackwood, Mr. Bell replied that Sergeant Larry Brown had called him, Mr. Bell, and asked that Mr. Bell pursue the warrant. The Sergeant Brown, referred to by Mr. Bell, is a member of the Special Identification and Investigation Unit of the LAPD, one of the agencies that Mr. Tackwood alleges engages in illegal activities designed to incriminate political activists on the left. What will happen to Mr. Tackwood should he be apprehended by the Parole Department is as yet unclear. Even though it is his former superiors at the LAPD who have initiated action on the long-standing APB out on Mr. Tackwood, the disposition of his case is still in the hands of the Parole Services Division and ultimately the adult authority of the state of California. It is presumed that Mr. Tackwood is presently in hiding to avoid apprehension by authorities. This is Mary Bess reporting. Is the chief witness for the prosecution in the Los Angeles 12 trial a longtime police informer, or did he turn state's evidence, as the prosecution contends, after the police raid on Panther headquarters on December 8, 1969, from which charges against the LA-12 stem? This has become the central issue in the trial of the LA-12, and its resolution may well determine their fate. Testimony given by former police informer Louis Tackwood today challenges the credibility of the testimony of Melvin Cotton Smith, the state's chief witness. Smith, number 3 man in the Panther organization at the time of the shootout, is reported by the district attorney's office to have turned state's evidence after charges were brought against himself and 18 others who participated in the shootout. In an interview conducted in August of this year, before Mr. Tackwood had surfaced, he alleged how he had first become aware that Melvin Cotton Smith was a paid informer and advanced his understanding of Smith's role in the 1969 shootout between police and the Panthers.
Well, I was introduced to Cotton through R.G. Falwell. He was number 3 man. He could have been number 1, actually, before that, next to G, but he was always the sneaky partner. I think this was supposed to turn state evidence. From the way, not cop, same thing I am, from way back, to the time he went to the party. They put him in there. You know, it's like they hooked this thing up, CCS, and Cotton knew just the same as I knew. He was there first, so they put Cotton in there and gave him a carte blanche. Go to town, buddy. You'll never get it. But see, Cotton was waiting for intelligence. See, and every time Cotton, actually CCS didn't get hold of Cotton till about 2 months before that big blowout over there, which was a provoked thing. So what they're waiting for, now you check this too, the Panthers have a stash of guns in Compton that they're supposed to be moving to, down in L.A. They're supposed to have a big meeting that morning. You see where I'm coming from? And Cotton helped instigate that, let's shoot them out, baby, All right, now every big Panther was supposed to be there, including G. See my point? Okay, what they were going to do is just kill them all, In other words, we kill as many as we can, and we got the rest of them dead anyway. But it didn't work like that. It just took them a little longer than they thought it was going to take, because the excuse they used was that 2 days prior to this, one of the guys had pulled a gun on a sergeant. You go pull a gun on a sergeant right now and see what happens. You had to be no Panther. You get killed then and there. but they waited 2 days when the meeting came about to bust the place. 2 months ago, there was a long table, longer than that. Cotton's at the end of it on this side, and I'm sitting like next to Cotton, like right here. Cotton has a pair of scissors and cardboard. He's in CCS. Sheriff, Mahoney, Lieutenant Keel, 2 CIA men, and an FBI agent. And we're sitting there, and they got pictures in front of them, and they got Cotton cutting up this cardboard and to make this room, make this building. And he's putting little dolls with names on them, just where they were in, association and such and such. And we were talking about it, and he said, man, I ain't scared, But see, they used him pretty badly, though. They had no more use for him, because they were getting ready to destroy the Panthers, and, the whole, from day one, they were making them, how they put it, they would they would not be a functional organization when they got through anyway with it, so they didn't need Cotton anymore. Cotton was too radical for them. So they said, but what they're going to do for him is send him out of state, though.
Tackwood referred to the CCS, Criminal Conspiracy Section of the LAPD, and to Sergeants Sherritt and Mahoney and Lieutenant Robert Keel of that section, and to Sergeant R.G. Farwell of the Special Identification and Investigation Division of the LAPD. Louis Tackwood testified today that Sergeant Farwell showed him a photograph of Cotton Smith around August of 1969, at least 3 months before the shootout between police and Panthers, and identified Smith as a police informer. Sergeant Farwell, who preceded Mr. Tackwood on the stand today, stated that Tackwood had worked for him as a paid informer from mid-September through mid-October of 1970, but that he didn't know Tackwood in 1969 and had at no time shown Tackwood a photo of Cotton Smith, nor identified Smith as an informer. Tackwood also testified that he had talked with Cotton Smith and Deputy District Attorney Collins, a member of the prosecution in the LA-12 trial, in the office of the Criminal Conspiracy Section of the LAPD, while prosecution strategy for the LA-12 trial was being discussed. In a conversation which took place between Smith and himself sometime between July and September of this year, Tackwood says that Smith indicated to him that he, Smith, would be well provided for after the trial of the then LA-13 was over, and that Smith had been working as a paid informer for the LAPD since 1967. All of which adds an interesting and perhaps significant dimension to the trial of the LA-12 and the career of Louis Tackwood. This is Mary Bess reporting for KPFK.